हे गुड मॉर्निंग। आप सभी को स्वागत करता हूँ मेरी और एक नई वीडियो में एंड आल्सो द ऑडियो कह सकते हो। एंड आज के इस ऑडियो और वीडियो में हम बात करेंगे और एक नई चैप्टर में चैप्टर फ्रॉम द बुक द ब्रेन द स्टोरी ऑफ यू से। ओके, एंड यस्टरडे मैंने रीडिंग किया था चैप्टर नंबर 3 के बारे में एंड उसे मैं अपलोड कर चुका हूँ। एंड आज हम रीडिंग करेंगे चैप्टर 4। एंड आप लोगों को ये बताने में खुशी हो रही है कि जो चैप्टर नंबर 4 की जो टाइटल है दैट इज़ हाउ डू आई डिसाइड, मैं कैसे डिसाइड करता हूँ। एंड अगर मैं जो भी चीज़ें हम डिसाइड करते हैं दैट टाइम में हमारे दिमाग में क्या फंक्शंस चल रहे होते हैं उसके बारे में भी हम देखेंगे। बहुत सारी चीज़ें हैं। ओके, तो फिर से मैं आप सभी को स्वागत करना चाहूँगा मेरी ये और एक वीडियो में जहाँ पर हम रीडिंग करते हैं। एंड थैंक यू। तो शुरू करते हैं। ओके, सॉरी फॉर द डिस्टर्बेंस। तो मैं स्टार्ट करता हूँ। हाउ डू आई डिसाइड, इसकी जो इंट्रोडक्शन पार्ट में है तो इससे पहले मैं रीडिंग करना चाहूँगा इंट्रोडक्शन को। शुड आई ईट द आइसक्रीम और नॉट? Do I answer this email now or late? Which shows how days are assembled from thousands of small decisions. What to do and which way to go, how to respond, whether to partake. Early theories of decisions making assume that humans are rational actors, telling the pros and cons of our options to come to an optimal decision. But scientific observations of human decision making don't bear that out. Brains are composed of multiple competing networks, each of which has its own goals and desires. When deciding whether or not to gobble down the ice cream, some networks in your brain want the sugar, other networks are vote against it based on long-term considerations of vanity. Other networks suggest that perhaps you could eat the ice cream if you promise yourself you will go to the gym tomorrow. Your brain is like a neural parliament composed of rival political parties which fight it out to steer the ship of state. Sometimes you decide selfishly, sometimes generously, sometimes impulsively, and sometimes with a long view in mind. We are complex creatures because we are composed of many drives, all of which want to be in control. और आज की जो चैप्टर नंबर 4 में मैं बात करने वाला हूँ, पर्टिकुलरली हम डिसीजंस कैसे लेते हैं। डिसीजंस, सपोज मैंने आइसक्रीम को देखा, क्या आइसक्रीम मुझे खाना चाहिए या नहीं, हाँ या नहीं। इसके लिए क्या होगा, हमारे दिमाग में एक जो दिमाग के अंदर ना एक न्यूरॉन्स का एक पार्लियामेंट होता है। वहाँ पर अगर मैं हाँ करता हूँ तो ना के साइड में भी कुछ लोग होते हैं, वो इसके खिलाफ जाएंगे इसी के खिलाफ जाएंगे एंड बोलेंगे नहीं खाना तुझे आइसक्रीम, ये सेहत के लिए अच्छी नहीं होती। एंड दूसरी तरफ जहाँ पर आइसक्रीम खाना बहुत अच्छा है, बहुत मीठा है, बहुत अच्छा लगेगा, ऐसे बहुत सारे होते हैं। एंड जहाँ पर जो फाइट करते हुए कौन जीतेगा इसमें, वही बाजी मारता है। ओके, इसके अंदर जो पार्लियामेंट के अंदर, जो माइंड की पार्लियामेंट के अंदर जो चल रहा है फाइट, इस फाइट को हम कॉन्साइडली एक अच्छी तरह समझेंगे इस चैप्टर में। ओके ओके, इस चैप्टर को मैं शुरुआत करने से पहले आप सभी को इसका जो आउटलाइंस, कितने टॉपिक्स हैं उसके बारे में थोड़ी सी बात करते हैं। ओके, तो पहला टॉपिक होने वाला है द साउंड ऑफ ए डिसीजन। साउंड ऑफ ए डिसीजन, ओके, मतलब इस एक साउंड का, डिसीजन का एक साउंड, इसे मैं समझा नहीं पा रहा हूँ, उससे हम रीडिंग करते टाइम अच्छे से समझेंगे। एंड नेक्स्ट टॉपिक है द ब्रेन इज अ मशीन बिल्ड फ्रॉम कन्फ्लिक्ट। हमारे दिमाग एक मशीन है, वो बनी है कॉन्फ्लिक्ट के द्वारा। कॉन्फ्लिक्ट कॉन्फ्लिक्ट मतलब हम फाइटिंग करते हैं ना, फाइटिंग करते हैं, जो टीम जीतती है उसी का हो जाता है। ओके, एक नेक्स्ट टॉपिक ये है कि स्टेट्स ऑफ द बॉडी हेल्प यू डिसाइड। तुम्हारे बॉडी का जो कंडीशन है वो आपको डिसाइड करने में मदद करता है किसी भी डिसीजन को लेने से। ओके, नेक्स्ट टॉपिक होने वाली है हमारी कौन सी, ट्रैवलिंग टू द फ्यूचर। हम फ्यूचर में कैसे ट्रैवल कर सकते हैं उसके लिए भी हम जानेंगे, अच्छे से जानेंगे। एंड द पावर ऑफ नाउ, एंड वर्तमान का जो पावर है क्या है उसके बारे में भी बहुत अच्छा टॉपिक है ये। एंड उसके बाद ओवरकमिंग द पावर ऑफ नाउ एंड द उलिसेस कंट्रैक्ट। ओवरकमिंग कैसे आएंगे पावर ऑफ नाउ से, एंड उलिसेस ऑफ कंट्रैक्ट जो कि हम पहले बिलीफ बनाते हैं ना, उससे हम कैसे निकल सकते हैं। एंड उसके बाद आता है द इनविजिबल मैकेनिज्म्स ऑफ डिसीजन मेकिंग। जो डिसीजन मेकिंग के पीछे जो इनविजिबल जो फैक्ट्री चलती है, पार्लियामेंट चलती है, संसद चलती है, उसके बारे में भी हम बात करेंगे। एंड डिसीजंस एंड द सोसाइटी, ये और एक टॉपिक है इस चैप्टर नंबर 4 की। एंड उसके बाद यही लास्ट टॉपिक है। ओके, तो आज मोटा मोटी हम जानने वाले हैं बहुत सारे चीज़ें के बारे में, जैसे कि हो गया हम जो डिसीजंस लेते हैं, हमें लगता है कि हम डिसीजन लेते हैं, लेकिन हमारे दिमाग के अंदर इतने सारे न्यूरॉन्स हैं, वो उनके अंदर ही फाइटिंग करते हैं, वोटिंग करते हैं। हाँ नहीं तुम्हें ये करना चाहिए, नहीं नहीं तुम्हें ना करना है। ओके, जो जो हाँ हाँ बोलता है तो तुम इस साइड ये वोट करो, कितनी वोटिंग होती है हाँ या ना में। अगर उस फाइट में, दिमाग के फाइट में अगर कोई जीतता है, अगर हाँ जीतता है तो तुम हाँ बोलते हो, अगर ना जीतता है तुम ना बोलते हो। ओके, बहुत सारे। एंड जो हमारे दिमाग में जो पार्ट्स होते हैं, जो पार्ट्स हमें डिसीजन मेकिंग लेने में मदद करते हैं, उसके बारे में आल्सो इसमें डिस्कस किया गया है आई थिंक। ओके, तो लेट्स स्टार्ट करते हैं। जो पहला टॉपिक होने वाली है हमारी, द साउंड ऑफ ए डिसीजन। डिसीजन के एक साउंड को हम देखने वाले हैं पहले। ऑन द ऑन द ऑपरेटिंग टेबल ए पेशेंट नेम जिम is undergoing brain surgery to stop tremors of his hand. Long thin wires called electrodes have been lowered into Jim's brain by the neurosurgeon by applying a small electric current through the wires. The patterns of activity in Jim's neurons can be adjusted to reduce his tremors. The electrodes create a special opportunity to eavesdrop on the activity of single neurons. Neurons talk with one another via electrical spikes called axon potentials. But these signals are invisibly tiny, so surgeons and researchers often pass the tiny electrical signal through an audio speaker that way a minuscule change in voltage, a tenth of a volt that lasts the thousandth of a second, is turned into a audible cough. As the electrode is learned through different regions of the brain, the activity patterns of those regions can be recognized by the trained ear. Some locations are characterized by pop, 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 while others sound quite different. Pop, 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 pop. It's like suddenly dropping in on the conversation of a few people. Okay? Where randomly on the globe because the people you land upon will have specific jobs in diverse cultures. They will all have very different conversations going on. I am in the operating room as a researcher while my colleague performed the surgery. My goal is to better understand how the brain makes decisions. To that end, I asked Jim to perform different tasks like speaking, reading, looking, decision to determine what's correlated with with the activity of his neurons because the brain has no pain receptors. A patient can be awake during a surgery. I have asked Jim to look at a simple picture while we are recording. What happens in your brain when you see the old woman? What changes when you see young lady? अब यहाँ पर एक फिगर फिगर दिया गया है जहाँ पर एक यंग लेडी की दिया गया है बट ये यंग लेडी के जैसा दिख नहीं रहा है एक बुढ़ी जैसा दिख रहा है सॉरी ओल्ड अरे ओल्ड वुमेन की पिक्चर दी है पहला तो मैं मेन के जैसा लग रहा था बट इन्होंने यहाँ पर लिखा है कि वुमेन तो अभी मुझे वुमेन की तरह नज़र आ रहा है ओके and in the figure you may see a young lady with a bonnet looking away. Now try to find another way of interpreting the same image. An old woman looking down and to the left. This picture can be seen in one of two ways. This is known as perceptual biasability. The lines on the page are consistent with two different interpretations. When you are stare at the figure, you will see one version and then eventually the other and then first again and so on. Here is the important part. Nothing on the physical page changes. So whenever Jim reports that the image has flipped, it has to be because of something that changed inside his brain. This moment he sees the young lady or that old woman, his brain has made a decision. A decision does not have to be conscious. In this case, it's a perceptual decision by Jim's visual system, and the mechanics of the switchover are hidden completely under the hood. In theory, a brain should be able to see both the young lady and the old lady at the same time. But in reality, a brain does not do that reflexively. It takes something ambitious and makes a choice. Eventually, remakes the choice, and it might switch back and forth over and over. But our brains are always crossing ambiguity into choices. So when Jim's brain lands on an interpretation of the young lady or the old woman, we can listen to the responses from a small number of neurons. Some some live into a higher rate of activity, puff, 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 while other neurons slow down, puff, 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 puff. It's not always about speeding off and slowing down. Sometimes neurons change their patterns of activity in more subtle ways, becoming synchronized or desynchronized with other neurons even while maintaining their original pace. The neurons we happen to be spying on are not, by themselves, responsible for the perceptual change. Instead, they are operate in concert with billions of other neurons. So the changes we can witness are just the reflection of a changing pattern, taking hold across large sweeps of brain territory. When one pattern wins out over the other in Jim's brain, a decision has been landed upon. Your brain makes thousands of decisions every day of your life, detecting your experience of the world from the decision of what to wear, where, whom to call, and how to interpret an offhand comment, whether to reply to an email, when to leave. Decisions underlie our every action and thought. Who you are emerges from the brain-wide battles for dominance that rage in your school every moment of your life. Listening to Jim's neural activity, pop, pop, pop. It's impossible not to be aware. After all, this is what every decision in the history of our species sounded like. Every marriage proposal, every declaration of war, Every leap of the imagination, every mission launched into the unknown, every act of kindness, every lie, every euphoric breakthrough, every decisive moment, it all happened right here in the darkness of the school, emerging from patterns of activity in networks of biological cells. आप सभी को बताना चाहूँगा कि जो अभी जो मैंने रीडिंग किया टॉपिक के बारे में, जो कि पहला द साउंड ऑफ डिसीजन। द साउंड ऑफ डिसीजन का मतलब क्या है? आप सभी को जो नॉर्मल मीनिंग आपको समझ में आ रहा होगा कि साउंड ऑफ डिसीजन मतलब डिसीजन का एक साउंड को हम लिसन करते हैं। एंड इसके अंदर एक ही बात को समझा गया है कि हम जो भी डिसीजंस लेते हैं, पहले हम उस चीज़ को देखते हैं, देखने के बाद ही हम डिसीजन लेते हैं। ओके, इसमें एक पिक्चर दिया गया है एक ओल्ड लेडी का। एंड व्हेन यू सी सडनली दिस पिक्चर, वो एक यंग लेडी के जैसा दिखाई देगा। एंड आफ्टर ऑल फिर से आप देखोगे तो वो आपको ओल्ड लेडी दिखाई देगी। तो इसमें तो फिजिकली वो पिक्चर तो एक ही है, बट हमारे दिमाग पहला क्या, पहले हमें यंग लेडी दिखाई दे रहा था, एंड नाउ कमिंग टू द पॉइंट दैट इज ओल्ड वुमेन। हाउ इट इज पॉसिबल? बिकॉज एक ही तो पिक्चर है, बट व्हाई वी सी द टू फेस ऑफ दिस पिक्चर? बिकॉज इन हमारे ब्रेन के अंदर एक जो जो प्रोसेसिंग होता है, जो न्यूरॉन्स की प्रोसेसिंग होता है, वो स्लो होता है कभी कभी एंड कभी कभी स्पीड होता है। ओके, इसी तहत हमें ऐसे आता है, दिमाग नजर आता है। ओके, दिस इज द फर्स्ट टॉपिक। एंड सेकंड टॉपिक पे आते हैं, जो कि है द ब्रेन इज ए मशीन बट बिल्ड फ्रॉम conflict. Okay, let's take a closer look at what's happening behind the scenes during a decision. Imagine you are making a simple choice, standing in the frozen yogurt store, trying to decide between two flavors you like equally. Say these are the mint and lemon. Okay, from the outside, does not look like you are doing much. You are simply stuck there, looking back and forth between the two options. But inside your brain, a simple choice like this unleashes the hurricane of activity. By itself, a single neuron has no meaningful influence, but each neuron is connected to thousands of others, and they in turn connect to thousands of others, and so on in a massive, loopy, intertwining network. They are all releasing chemicals that excite or depress each other. Within this wave, a particular constellation of neurons represents mint. This pattern is formed from neurons that mutually excite each other. They are not necessarily next to one another. Rather, they might span distant brain regions involved in smell, taste, vision, and your unique history of memories involving mint. Each of these neurons by itself has little to do with mint. In fact, each neuron plays many roles at different times in ever shifting coalition. But when these neurons all become active collectively in this particular arrangement that meant to your brain, as you are standing in front of the yogurt selection, this federation of neurons eagerly communicates with one another like disposed individuals linking online. These neurons are not acting alone in their electioneering. At the same time, the competing possibly lemon is represented by its own neural party. Each coalition, mint and lemon, tries to gain the upper hand by intensifying its own activity and suppressing the others. They fight it out until the one triumphs in the winner-take-all competition. The winning network defines what you do next. Unlike computers, the brain runs on conflict between the different possibilities, all of which try to outcompete the others. And there are always multiple options even after you have selected mint or lemon. You find yourself in a new conflict. Should you eat the whole thing? The part of you want the delicious energy source, and at the same time, part of you knows it's sugary, and perhaps you should be jogging instead. Whether you polish off the whole container is simply a matter of the way the infighting goes. As a result, on ongoing conflict in the brain, we can argue with ourselves, curse at ourselves, cajole ourselves, but who exactly is talking with whom? It's all you, but it's different parts of you. To tease apart some of the major competing systems in the brain, consider a thought experiment known as the trolley dilemma. A trolley is barreling down a train track out of control. Four workers are making repairs farther down the track, and you, a bystander, quickly realized that they will be killed by the runway trolley. You notice that there is a lever nearby that can divert the trolley onto another truck. But hang on, you say that there is one worker on the truck. So if you pull the lever, one worker will be killed. If you don't, four will be killed. Do you pull the lever? Okay, okay. The trolley dilemma. When people are asked what they would do in the scenario, almost everyone pulls the lever. After all, it's far better that only one person is killed rather than four. Now consider a slightly different second scenario. The situation begins with the same premise. A trolley is barreling down the tracks out of control, and four workers are going to be killed. But this time you are standing on the deck of water tower overlooking the tracks, and you notice there is a large man standing off there with you, gazing out into a distance. You realize that if you push him off and he is land right on the track, and his body weight will be sufficient to stop the trolley and save the four workers. Do you push him off? But wait, are not you being asked to consider the same question in both cases? Trading one life for why do the result come out so differently in the second scenario? Ethicists have addressed this problem from many angles, but imaging has been able to provide a fairly straightforward answer. To the brain, the first scenario is just a math problem. The dilemma activity activates region involved in solving logical problem. ओके एंड यहाँ पर एक चित्र दिया गया है, पिक्चर दिया गया है जहाँ पर लिखा गया है जो जो मस्तिष्क का माइंड का जो डिफरेंट पार्ट्स हैं उसके बारे में। हमारे दिमाग के अंदर फुल द लिवर के बारे में सोचे, डोर्सो लैटरल प्रीफ्रंटल कॉर्टेक्स, parietal cortex, ventrolateral prefrontal cortex. Several regions of the brain are more invested in logical problem solving. Okay, ये तीन जो cortex होते हैं दिमाग में वो logical problem solve करते टाइम यूज होते हैं. In the second scenario, you have to physically interact with a man and push him to his death. That recruits additional networks into the decision. Brain regions involved in emotion. In the second scenario, we are caught in a conflict between two systems that have different opinions. Our rational networks tell us that one death is better than four, but our emotional networks trigger a gut feeling that murderer of the bystander is wrong. You are caught between competing drives with the result that your decision is likely to change entirely from the first round. Okay, यहाँ पर और एक चित्र दिया गया है कि जहाँ पर दिमाग का जो बहुत सारे हिस्से के बारे में बताया गया है चित्र में। दिमाग का जो पहला हिस्सा है anterior cingulate cortex, उसके बाद नीचे है medial prefrontal cortex and orbitofrontal cortex and amygdala brainstem एंड इसके अंदर है और ये दिखाई नहीं अच्छा नहीं रहा। ओके, आपको ये जानना है तो आप इसे गूगल में सर्च कर सकते हो। ओके, इसी के बारे में when considering pushing an innocent man to his death, networks involved in emotions become more involved in the decision making, and that can flip the outcome. The trolley dilemma sheds light on real-world situations. Consider modern warfare, which has become more like pulling the lever than pushing the man off the tower. When a person hits the button to launch a long-range missile, it involves only the networks involved in solving logical problems. Operating a drone can become like a video game. Cyber attacks wreak consequences at a distance. The rational networks are at work here, but not necessarily the emotional networks. The detached nature of distance warfare reduces internal conflict, making it easier to wage. One pundit suggested that the button to launch nuclear missiles should be implanted in the chest of the president's best friend. That way, if he chose to launch knocks, he had have to inflict physical violence on his friend during his him offense. That consideration would recruit emotional networks into the decision. When making life and death decisions, unchecked region can be dangerous. Our emotions are a powerful and often insightful constituency, and we had be remiss to exclude them from the parliamentary voting. The world would then the world would not be better if we all behaved like robots. Although the neuroscience is new, this intuition has a long history. The ancient Greeks suggested that we should think of our lives like chariots. We are charioteers trying to hold two horses, the white horse of reason and the black horse of reason. Each horse pulls off center in opposite direction. Your job is to keep the control of both horses, navigating down the middle of the road. Indeed, in typical neuroscientific fashion, we can unmask the importance of emotions by seeing what happens when someone loses the capacity to include them in decision making. ओके, यहाँ पर एक बहुत अच्छा मैसेज दिया गया है जहाँ पर यहाँ पर बात किया जा रहा है कि ये वाह एक सिचुएशन दिया जा रहा है। एक पहला सिचुएशन ये है कि जहाँ पर एक ट्रेन लाइन पे एक ट्रेन लाइन पे 4 बंदे काम कर रहे हैं। उसी ट्रेन लाइन पे अटैच होकर और एक ट्रेन लाइन निकला है। उसमें एक ही बंदा काम कर रहा है। ट्रेन आ रहा है, वो ट्रेन अगर लीवर को राइट करेगा तो एक ही बंदा मारा जाएगा। अगर ट्रैक में वो सीधा ही आएगा तो 4 बंदे मारा जाएंगे। तो इसमें आप किसको एक बंदे को मार के 4 बंदों को बचाना चाहोगे या 4 बंदे को मार को एक इंसान को बचाना चाहोगे? ऑब्वियसली यहाँ पर आप सोचोगे अगर एक इंसान के बदले में 4 बच जाते हैं तो हम एक इंसान को मारेंगे। ओके, ऑब्वियस बात है, ये आप डिसीजन लोगे। बट और एक केस दिया जा रहा है यहाँ पर कि एक ट्रैक में 4 बंदे काम कर रहे हैं एंड उसी के ट्रेन ट्रैक के पास में ही एक वाटर टैंक है। वाटर टैंक में आप ऊपर खड़े हो एंड आपके साथ आपका दोस्त खड़ा है, वो भी हट्टा कट्टा बहुत बड़ा। ओके, तो वो ट्रेन आ रहा है तो आप देखें कि तुम्हारे जो ट्रेन ट्रैक के सामने 4 वर्कर्स काम कर रहे हैं एंड तुम्हें नजर आ रहा है अगर वो सीधा ट्रेन जाएगा तो उन्हें मारा जाएगा। एंड तुम्हारे पास में एक हट्टा कट्टा इंसान खड़ा है, अगर वो नीचे वो उसके सामने ट्रेन के सामने आ जाता है तो वो ट्रेन को रोक सकता है। ओके, तुम क्या करना, तुम्हारे क्या डिसीजन होगे अगर तुम वो चारों को मरने दोगे या तुम्हारे पास जो इंसान खड़ा है उस इंसान को नीचे धकेल के उस ट्रेन को रुकवा देगा। ओके, ऑब्वियस बात है आपको, आप ऑब्वियस बात है आपको आपको आप ना वो डिसीजन ले। यहाँ पर देखो, फिजिकली आप तो मर्डर नहीं कर सकते क्योंकि यहाँ पर इमोशन की बात आता है। अगर आप थोड़ी धीरे से अटैच नहीं होते, जैसे कि पहले सिनेरियो में आप अटैच नहीं थे, तो आप एक इंसान को मार के 4 इंसान को बचाने को डिसीजन लेते थे। बट नाउ इन दिस केस एक देखो कि आप फिजिकली एक मर्डर कर रहे हो, डेथ कर रहे हो, उसके बाद 4 माने जिंदा हो रहे हैं। इसका मतलब तुम इसमें इमोशंस आती है, तुम्हारे पास मर्डर हो जाती है। मैं तुम मर्डर नहीं कर सकते क्योंकि इमोशन काम कर रहे हैं, तो हम यहाँ पर चारों को मारना छोड़ दोगे। ओके, ऐसी यहाँ पर ऐसे कि जैसे कि हमारे जो पास में होते हैं, जो फिजिकल इमोशनल होते हैं, उसे हम ज़्यादा तवज्जो देते हैं कि इंस्टेड जो कि हमारे अलग अलग होते हैं। हमारे पास लीवर नहीं होता, ओके, हमें अगर हम ट्रेन में होते तो हम एक को मरवाते हैं, 4 को बचाते हैं। लेकिन इन द केस ऑफ सेकेंड सिनेरियो वहाँ पर आप ऐसे नहीं कर सकते, आप फिजिकली एक को मारना पड़ेगा, तभी आप चारों को बचा सकते हो। ओके, दिस इज ऑल अबाउट इस टॉपिक में दिया गया है, टॉपिक नंबर 2। एंड इसमें और एक दिया गया है, एक बॉक्स बनाकर। इस बॉक्स में ये लिखा है द स्प्लिट ब्रेन ऑन मार्क्सिंग द कॉन्फ्लिक्ट hours under special circumstances, it becomes particularly easy to witness internal conflict between the different parts of the brain. As a treatment for certain forms of epilepsy, some patients undergo split brain surgery in which the brain's 2 hemispheres are disconnected from each other. Normally, the 2 hemispheres are connected by a superhighway of nerves called the corpus callosum, and it allows the right and left halves to coordinate and work in concert. If you are feeling chilly, both of your hands cooperate. One hold your jacket hem while the other tugs off the zipper. But when the corpus callosum is served, severed, a remarkable and haunting clinical condition can emerge allied hand syndrome. The 2 hands can act with totally different intentions. The patient begins to zip off a jacket with one hand, and the other hand, the alien head suddenly grabs the zipper and pulls it back down. Or the patient might reach for a biscuit with one hand, and their other hand leaps into action to slap the first hand into failure. The normal conflict running in the brain is revealed as the 2 hemispheres act independently of each other. Alien hand syndrome normally fades in the weeks after surgery as the 2 halves of the brain take advantage of remaining connections to begin coordinating again. But it serves as a clear demonstration that even when we think we are being single-minded, our actions are the product of immense battles that continually rise and fall in the darkness of the cranium. Okay. Then next topic है, इस ये था the topic, the brain is a machine gun from conflict. Next है the states of the body help you decide. The state of the body जो कि आपको डिसीजन लेने में आपको मदद करती है। Emotions do more than add reasonings to our lives. They are also the secret behind how we navigate what to do next at every moment. This is illustrated by looking at the situation of Tammy Meyer, a former engineer who got into a motorcycle accident. The consequence was damage to her orbitofrontal cortex, the region just above the sockets of the eyes. This brain region is critical for integrating signals streaming in from her body. Signals that tell the rest of the brain what state her body is in. Hungry, nervous, excited, embarrassed, thirsty, joyful. Tommy does not look like someone who has suffered the traumatic brain injury. But if you were to spend even 5 minutes with her, you would detect what there is a problem with her ability to handle life's daily decisions. Although she can describe all the pros and the cons of a choice in front of her. Even the simplest situations leave her mired in decision because she can no longer read her body's emotional summaries. Decisions become incredibly difficult for her. Now, no choice is tangibly different from another. Without decision making, little gets done. Tammy reports the offense spends all day on the sofa. Tammy's brain injury tells us something crucial about decision making. It's easy to think about the brain commanding the body from on high, but in fact, the brain is in constant feedback with the body. The physical signals from the body give a quick summary of what's going on and what to do about it. To land on a choice, the body and the brain have to be in close communication. Consider this situation. You want to pass a misdelivered package over to your next door neighbors. But as you approach to the gate to their yard, their dog growls and bares its teeth. Do you open the gate and press the front door? Your knowledge of the statistics of dog attacks is not a deciding factor. Here instead, the dog's threatening posture triggers a set of physiological responses in your body. An increased heart rate, a tightening in the gut, a tensing of the muscles, pupil dilation, changes in blood hormones, opening of sweat glands, and so on. These responses are automatic and unconscious. In this moment, standing there with your hand on the gate latch, there are many external details you could assess. For example, the color of dog's collar, but what your brain really needs to know right now is whether you should face the dog or deliver the package another way. The state of your body helps you in this task. It serves as a summary of situation. Your physiological signature can be thought of as a low resolution headline. This is bad or this is no problem, and that helps your brain decide what to do next. Every day we read the states of our bodies like this. In most situations physiological signals are more subtle, and so we tend to be unaware of them. However, those signals are crucial to steering the decisions we have to make. Consider being in a supermarket. This is a kind of place which leaves tummy paralyzed with indecision. Which apples, which apples, which bread, which ice cream, and thousands of choices bear down upon supports with the end result that we spend hundreds of hours of our lives standing in the aisles and trying to make our neural networks commit to the one decision over another. Although we don't commonly realize it, our body helps us to navigate this bubbling complexity. Take the choice of which kind of soup to buy, and there is too much data here for you to grapple with calories, price, salt content, and taste, packaging, and so on. If you were a robot, you had be stuck here all the day and trying to make a decision with no obvious way to trade off. Which details matter more to land on a choice. You need a summary of some sort, and that's what the feedback from your body is able to give you. Thinking about your budget might make your palms sweat, and you might salivate thinking about the last time you consumed the chicken noodle soup, or noting the excessive creaminess of other soup might put a cramp in your intensiveness. You simulate your experience with one soup and then the other. Your bodily experience helps your brain to quickly place a value on soup A and another on soup B, allowing you to be tip the balance in one direction or other. You don't just extract the data from the soup cans. You feel the data. These emotional signatures are more subtle than the ones related to facing down a barking dog. But the idea is the same. Each choice is marked by a bodily signature, and that helps you to decide. Earlier, when you were deciding between the mint and lemon yogurt, there was a battle between networks, the physiological states from your body, where the key things that helped keep that battle, that allowed one network to win over another. Because of her brain damage, Tammy lacks the ability to integrate her bodily signals into her decision making, so he has no way to rapidly compare the overall value between options, no way to prioritize the dozens of details that she can articulate. That's why Tammy stays on the sofa much of the time. None of the choices in front of her carry any particular emotional value. There is no way to tip one's network's companion over any other. The debates in her neural parliament continue along in deadlock because the conscious mind has low bandwidth. You don't typically have full access to the bodily signals that tip your decisions. Most of the action in your body lives far below your awareness. Nonetheless, the signals can have far-reaching consequences on the type of person you believe you are. As one example, neuroscientist Montague has found a link between a person's politics and the character of their emotional responses. He puts participants in a brain scanner and measures their response to a series of images chosen to evoke a disgust response, from images of feces or to dead bodies to insect covered food. When they emerge from the scanner, they are asked if they would like to take part in another experiment. If they say yes, they take 10 minutes to answer a political ideology survey. They are asked questions about their feelings on gun control, abortion, free marital sex, and so on. Montague finds that the more disgusted a participant is by the images, the more politically conservative they are likely to be. The less disgusted, the more liberal. The correlation is so strong that a person's neural response to a single disgusting image predicts their score on the political ideology test with 95% accuracy. Political persuasion emerges at the intersection of the mental and corporal. ओके, ये अभी से मैंने टॉपिक और रीडिंग किया। इस टॉपिक में क्या नज़र आ रहा है, मतलब क्या, तो आपको बताना चाहूँगा। इसमें एक लिखा है क्या, ए बॉडी स्टेट्स ऑफ द व्हाट यू डिसाइड। ओके, टेक ए मिनट, सॉरी। कि अगर आप सिचुएशन में बहुत एम्बैरेस फील करते हो उसी हिसाब से आप डिसीजन लेंगे। अगर आप खुशी एक्साइटेड हो तो आप उसी हिसाब से डिसीजन लोगे। अगर आप बहुत बैड फील कर रहे हो तो उसी हिसाब से आप भी डिसीजन लेंगे। ओके, यहाँ पर एक एग्जांपल दिया गया है कि आप मार्केट में गए हो। ओके, आज सुपर मार्केट में चले गए एंड सुपर मार्केट में बहुत सारे देखा, एप्पल देखा, ऑरेंज देखा, बहुत सारे चीज़ें देखा एंड उसमें से आपको सूप को देखा, सूप देखा एंड बस देखने के बाद उसे मन करा खरीदे या नहीं खरीदे ऐसे सोच आएगा। तो उसमें सोच आने से पहले आपको बताना चाहूँगा, उससे पहले उस डिसीजन आने से पहले तुम्हारे दिमाग में ये चलेगा कि ओके, इस टाइप का सूप मैंने पहले भी पी चुका हूँ तो इस ये अच्छा नहीं होता है। एंड कोई तुम्हें बताया होगा कि हाँ, उस जगह की जो सूप होती है वो अच्छी नहीं होती है। तो आपको भी याद आएगी हाँ, इस जगह की सूप अच्छी नहीं होती तो हम दूसरी वाले शॉप से हम सूप लेते हैं, अच्छा होगा दूसरे वाला में। तो इसलिए ऐसे डिसीजन लेते हैं कि पहले जो चीज़ हम पास्ट हो चुके हैं उसी हिसाब से हम लेते, नहीं तो जो जैसे दिखती है एंड बहुत क्रिमिनल्स है, बहुत चिल्ली है, ऐसे करके हम डिसीजन लेते हैं जो कि हमें बॉडी के हिसाब से हमारे जो एंड उसके बाद वो सूप लेने, सपोज मैं सूप ले लिया, सूप लेने के बाद भी ये चिंता है कि ये अच्छा होगा या नहीं होगा, या ज़्यादा खाए ना कम खाए, इसका भी एक क्वेश्चन आता है। ओके, एंड इसमें एक एग्जांपल लिया गया है कि आप एक शॉप में चले गए एंड आपको दो चीज़ पसंद है, चॉकलेट लाना है तुम्हें एंड आपको दो फ्लेवर पसंद है, एक मिंट वाला एक लेमन वाला। ओके, तो आप कौन सा लोगे, मिंट वाला या लेमन वाला? हम्म? जो तुम्हारे मन में जो पहले स्ट्रॉन्ग, ओके, इस हिसाब से जो पहले मैं बता चुका हूँ कि हमारे दिमाग में अंदर एक पार्लियामेंट है, न्यूरॉन्स की पार्लियामेंट। न्यूरॉन्स में ना एक वोटिंग चलती है एंड जिस पार्टी ने ज़्यादा वोटिंग करती है वो निकल के आती है जीत के। ओके, इसी वजह से अगर यहाँ पर लेमन वाली पार्टी ज़्यादा आ गई तो आ जाती है तो लेमन वाला पार्टी जीत जाएगा एंड आप लेमन वाला डिसाइड करेंगे एंड लेमन डिसाइड करने के बाद ये लेमन चॉकलेट पूरा खाएंगे या आधा खाएंगे इसकी भी चिंता होगी। ओके, इसमें भी और एक डिसीजन आता है। ओके, हर एक पल में हम सोचते हैं कि जो हर में अगर ये जो बात कर रहा हूँ, ये बात करने में जो अंदर में बहुत ट्रिलियंस ऑफ वर्क लगती है अंदर मेरे दिमाग के अंदर न्यूरॉन्स में, उसे हम अंदर उसे हम ख्याल आवर नहीं होता उसका। ओके, नेक्स्ट टॉपिक में जाना चाहूँगा वो है ट्रैवलिंग टू द फ्यूचर। तो each decision involves our past experiences stored in the states of our body as well as the present situation. Do I have enough money to buy X instead of you? And is option Z available? But there is one more part to the story of decisions, predictions about the future. और कि हम एक डिसीजन ऐसे भी लेते हैं कि हमारे प्रेजेंट को देखते रहो हम डिसीजन लेते हैं एंड प्रेजेंट को लेकर हम फ्यूचर को प्रेडिक्ट करते हैं, उस हिसाब से हम डिसीजन लेते हैं। ओके, एंड अक्रॉस द एनिमल किंगडम एवरी क्रिएचर इज वायर्ड टू सीक a river. And what is a river? At its essence, it's something that will move the body closer to its ideal set points. Water is a river when your body is getting dehydrated. Food is a river when your energy stores are running down. Water and food are called primary rivers, and which directly address biological needs. More generally, however, human behavior is steered by secondary rivers, which are things that predict primary rewards. For example, the sight of a metal rectangle would not by itself do much for your brain, but because you have learned to recognize it as a water fountain, then the sight of it comes to be rewarding. And when you are thirsty, in the case of humans, we can find even very abstract concepts rewarding, such as the feeling that we are valued by our local community And unlike animals, we can often put these rewards ahead of biological needs. As Reed Montague points out, sharks don't go on hunger strikes. The rest of the animal kingdom only judges its basic needs, while only humans regularly override those needs in difference to abstract ideas. So, when we are faced with an array of possibilities, we integrate internal and external data to try to maximize reward. However, it's defined to us as individuals. The challenge with any reward, whether basic or abstract, is that choices typically don't yield their fruits right away. We almost always have to make decisions in which a chosen course of action returns reward at a later time. People go to school for years because they value the future concept of having a degree. They slap through employment they don't enjoy with the future hope of a promotion, and they push themselves through painful exercise with a goal of being fit. To compare different options means assigning a value of each one in a common currency that of the anticipated reward and then choosing the one with the highest value. Consider this scenario. I have a bit of free time and I am trying to decide what to do, what to do. I need to get groceries, but I also know I need to get to a coffee shop and work on a grant for my lab because a deadline is coming up. I also want to spend time with my son at the park. How I do arbitrate this menu of options. It would be easy, of course, if I could directly compare these experiences while living each one and then rewinding time and finally choosing my path based on which outcome was the best. Alas, best. Alas, I cannot travel in time, or I can. Can I? Time travel is something the human brain does relentlessly. When faced with a decision, our brain stimulates different outcomes to generate a mock-up of what our future might be. Mentally, we can disconnect from the present moment and voyage to a world that does not yet exist. Now, simulating a scenario in my mind is just the first step. To decide between the imagined scenario, I try to estimate what the reward will be in each of those potential futures. When I simulate filling my pantry with the groceries, I feel a sense of relief at being organized and avoiding uncertainty. The grant carries different sorts of rewards, not only money for the laboratory, but more generally the kudos from my department chairman and a rewarding sense of accomplishment in my career. Imagining myself at the park with my son inspires joy and a sense of reward in terms of family closeness. My final decision will be navigated by how each future stacks up against the others in the common currency of my reward system. The choice is not easy because all these valuations are nuanced. The simulation of the grocery shopping is accompanied by feelings of tedium. The grant writing is attempted by a sense of frustration. The park with guilt about the not getting work done, typically under the radar of awareness. My brain simulates all the options one at a time and does a gut check one each. That's how I decide. How do I accurately simulate these features? How can I possibly predict what it will really be like to go down these paths? The answer is that I can't. There is no way to know that my predictions will be accurate. All my simulations are only based on my past experiences and my current models of how the world works, like all animals in the animal kingdom. We can't just wander around hoping to randomly discover what results in future reward and what does not. Instead, the key business of brains is to predict and to do this reasonably well. We need to continually learn about the world from our every experience. So, in this case, I place a value of each of these options based on my past experiences. Using the Hollywood studios in our minds, we travel in time to our imagined futures to see how much value they will have. And that's how I make my choices, comparing possible futures against one another. That's how I convert competing options into a common currency of future reward. Think of my predicted reward value for each option like an internal appraisal that stores how good something will be. Because grocery shopping will supply me with food. Let's say it's worth 10 reward units. Grant writing is difficult but necessary to my career. So it waits in at 25 reward units. I love spending time with my son, and so going to the park is to worth 50 reward units. But there is an interesting twist here. The world is complicated, and so our internal appraisal are never written in permanent ink. Your valuation of everything around you is changeable because quite often our predictions don't match what actually happens. The key to effective learning lies in tracking this prediction error, the difference between the unexpected outcome of a choice and the outcome that actually occurred. In today's case, my brain has a prediction about how rewarding the park is going to be. If we run into friends there and it turns out even better than I thought, that arises and appraisal the next time I am making such a decision. On the other hand, if the swings are broken and it rains, that lowers my appraisal the next time around. How does this work? There is a tiny ancient system in the brain whose mission is to keep updating your assessments of the world. This system is made of tiny groups of cells in your midbrain that speak in the language of a neurotransmitter called dopamine. When there is a mismatch between your expectation and your reality, this midbrain dopamine system broadcasts a signal that re-evaluates the price point. This signal tells the rest of the system whether things turned out better than expected. An increased burst of dopamine or a decrease in dopamine, that prediction error signal allows the rest of the brain to adjust its expectation to try to be closer to reality next time. The dopamine acts as an error corrector, a chemical appraiser that always works to make your appraisal as updated as they can be. That way, you can prioritize your decisions based on your optimized guesses about the future. Fundamentally, the brain is tuned to detect unexpected outcomes, and this sensitivity is at the heart of animals' ability to adapt and learn. It's no surprise then that the brain architecture involved in learning from experience is consistent across species from honeybees to humans. This suggests this suggests that brains discovered the basic principles of learning from reward long ago. Dopamine releasing neurons involved in decision making are concentrated into tiny regions of the brain called the ventral tegmental area and the substantia nigra. Despite their small sizes, they have a wide reach of broadcasting updates when the predicted values of a choice turns out to be too high and too low. Okay, this is about all the topic traveling to the future. Okay, traveling to the future इसमें क्या है? Wait a second. ओके इसमें है कि जो हम डिसीजंस लेते हैं डिसीजंस जो लेते हैं वो जो हमें फर्स्ट में हो चुका है हमारे साथ जो पास्ट में हमारे साथ हो चुका है उसी हिसाब से हम डिसीजंस लेते हैं अगर मेरे से अगर सपोज मैं कभी भी स्टेज परफॉर्मेंस नहीं किया हूँ तो पहली बार जब मैं स्टेज परफॉर्मेंस करने जाऊँगा तो मुझे मेरा पैर कांपने लगेगा मुझे डर नर्वस लगेगा एंड जस्ट अगर अगर व्हेन आई एम कमिंग टू द सेकंड टाइम टू द स्टेज परफॉर्मिंग मुझे कैसे फील होगा अरे ये तो मैं तो पहले से कर चुका हूँ यार इसमें क्या रखा है अगर स्टेज जाना है तो उसमें स्टेज परफॉर्मेंस करके आना है ओके ये एक क्या डिफरेंस आया इसमें पहले जहाँ पर आपको एक्सपीरियंस नहीं था तो पहले आप नहीं जानते थे कि हाँ अगर ये होगा तो मैं क्या करना करूँगा दूसरी बात दूसरी सिनेरियो में ये देखें कि हाँ अरे ये तो मैं कर चुका हूँ ऐसे बोल के तुम अच्छे से तुम सूटली चले गए एंड अपना स्टेज परफॉर्मेंस दिए तो बिना नर्वस हुए तो इस वजह से हम क्या पता चला कि जो हम डिसीजंस लेते हैं वो पहले जो बीता है उस चीज़ को लेकर हम उसे कंपेयर करके हम डिसीजंस लेते हैं ओके एंड आल्सो इन दिस पार्ट में इस पार्ट में हमें बताया गया है कि डिसीजन लेने में हमें डोपामाइन का भी रोल होता है ओके डोपामाइन रिलीजिंग न्यूरॉन्स इन्वॉल्व इन डिसीजन मेकिंग are concentrated in tiny regions of the brain called the ventral tegmental area and the substantia nigra. Despite their small sizes, they have a wide reach, broadcasting updates when the predicted value of the choice turns out to be too high or too low. Okay? ये था ये पार्ट के बारे में द ट्रैवलिंग ऑफ फ्यूचर नेक्स्ट टॉपिक है द पावर ऑफ नाउ वर्तमान की जो पावर क्या है okay so we have seen how values get attached to different options but there is a twist that often gets in the way of good decision making options right in front of us tend to be valued higher than those we merely simulate the thing that trips of good decision making about future is the present. In 2008, the U.S. economy took a sharp downturn. At the heart of the trouble was a simple fact that many homeowners had overborrowed. They had taken out loans that offered wonderfully low interest rates for a period of few years. The problem occurred at the end of the trial period when the rates went up. At the higher rates, many homeowners found themselves unable to make the payments. Close to the million homes went into foreclosure, sending shockwaves through the economy of the planet. What did this disaster have to do with competing networks in the brain? These subprime loans allowed people to obtain a nice house now, with the high rates deferred until later. As such, the offer perfectly appealed to the neural networks that desire instant gratification. That is those networks that want these things now because the seduction of the immediate satisfaction pulls us so strongly on our decision making. Housing umbrellas and can be understood not simply as an economic phenomenon but also as a neural one. The full of now was not just about the people borrowing of course, but also the lenders who were getting rich right now by offering loans that were not going to get paid. They rebundled the loans and sold them off. Such practices are unethical, but the temptation proved too ethical too many thousands. This now versus the future battle does not just apply to housing bombers. It goes across every aspect of our lives. It's why car dealers want to want you to get in and test drive a car. Why clothing stores want to you try on clothes. Why merchants want to toast the merchandise. Your mental simulation can't live off the experience of something right here, right now. The brain, the future can only ever be a pale shadow of the now. The power of now explains why people make decisions that feel good in the moment, but they have lousy consequences in the future. People who take a drink or a drug hit even though they know they should not. Athletes who take anabolic steroids, even though it may save years of their lives. Married partners who give in to unavailable affairs. Can we do anything about the seduction of the now? Thanks to competing systems in the brain, we can. Consider this. We all know that it's difficult to do certain things, like go regularly to the gym, and we want to be in shape. But when it comes down to it, there are usually things right in front of us that seem more enjoyable. The pull of what we are doing is stronger than the abstract notion of future fitness. So here is the solution to make certain you get the gym. You can take inspiration from a man who lived 3000 years ago. ओके, ये है पावर ऑफ नाउ की ओवल. ओके, पावर ऑफ नाउ मतलब क्या है? अगर हम नाउ वर्तमान को हम ठीक किए तो भविष्य भी हमारा ठीक रहेगा. ओके, if we do good things in now, then the result of this in future we get good. जैसे कि अगर हम अभी फिटनेस में ध्यान दिए थोड़ी थोड़ी सी तो फ्यूचर में हम हमारा एक अच्छा बॉडी बनी होगी इस हिसाब से. ओके, एंड ये था. एंड और एक चीज़ इसमें बताया गया है कि आप कभी कभी देखना, कभी कभी आप सुपर मार्केट गए होगे तो या कुछ मॉल में गया होगा तो आप देखा होगा वहीं पर ना वो ड्रेस को अलाउ करते हैं टच करने की एंड पहनने को भी अलाउ करते हैं. क्यों? हम जिस चीज़ को हम टच करते हैं, फिजिकली टच करते हैं एंड अगर पहनते हैं तो वो हमारे दिमाग में मन करता है कि उसे खरीद अच्छा लगेगा तो खरीदने को वो मन करेगा. इसीलिए वो मर्चेंडाइज लोग होते हैं वो अलाउ करते हैं कि उसे आप पहने एंड ट्राई करने का एक खरीदने का जो चांस होता है वो बढ़ जाता है कि हाँ ये खरीद सकते हैं. ओके, ये था प्रेजेंट ऑफ नाउ. एंड अगर हम वर्तमान को सही करेंगे तो भविष्य भी सही हो जाएगा. तो नेक्स्ट कमिंग टू द टॉपिक जो कि ओवरकमिंग द पावर ऑफ नाउ, द Ulysses contract. This man was in a more extreme version of the gym scenario. He had something he wanted to do, but knew he would not be able to resist temptation. When the time came for him, it was not about getting a better physique. It was about saving his life from a group of mesmerizing maidens. This was a legendary hero, Ulysses, on his way back from Trimpo. In the Trojan War, at some point on his long journey home, he realized that his ship would soon be passing an island where the beautiful Syrians lived. The Syrians were famous for singing songs so melodious that sailors were rapt and enchanted. The problem was that the sailors found the woman irresistible and would crash their ships into the rocks trying to get to them. Ulysses desperately wanted to hear the legendary songs, but he did not want to kill himself and his crew. So he hatched a plan. He knew that when he heard the music, he would be unable to resist steering toward the island rocks. The problem was not the present rational Ulysses, but instead the future illogical Ulysses, the person he had become when the Syrians came within earshot. So Ulysses ordered his men to lash him securely to the mast of the ship. They filled their oars with big swags as was not to hear the siren, and they rode under strict orders to ignore any of his pleas and cries and wreathing. Ulysses knew that his future self would be in no position to make good decisions, so the Ulysses of the sound mind arranged things so that he could not do the wrong thing. This sort of deal between your present and future self is known as a Ulysses contract. In this case of going to gym, my simple Ulysses contract is to arrange in advance for a friend to meet me there. The pressure to uphold the social contract lashes me to must. When you start looking for them, you will see that Ulysses contracts are all around you to take college students who swap Facebook passwords during the week of their final exams. Each student changes the password for others so that neither can log on until finals are over. The first step for a alcoholics in rehabilitation programs is to clear all the alcohol from their home. So the temptation is not to front of them when they are feeling weak. People with weight problems sometimes get surgery to reduce their stomach's volume so they physically cannot overheat in a different ways on a Ulysses contract. Some people arrange things so that a violation of their promise will trigger a financial donation to an anti-charity. For example, a woman who fought for equal rights her whole life wrote out a large check to a Ku Klux Klan with strict orders to her friend to mail the check if she smoked another cigarette. In all these cases, people structure things in the present so that their future slaves can't misbehave. By lasting ourselves to the most we can get around the seduction of now. It's the trick that lets us behave in better alignment with the kind of person we would like to be. The key to the Ulysses contract is recognizing that we are different people in different contexts to make better decisions. It's important not only to know yourself but all of your slaves. ओके इसमें क्या गया है ओके पहले तो हम वी नो द पावर ऑफ नाउ एंड नाउ कमिंग टू द ओवरकमिंग द पावर ऑफ नाउ उलिसेस कंट्रैक्ट उलिसेस कंट्रैक्ट क्या है उलिसेस कंट्रैक्ट की अरेंज एन एडवांस फॉर ए फ्रेंड मेक मी देयर ओके प्लानिंग करना उलिसेस मतलब पहले ही प्लानिंग करते हैं ना कि हाँ यही जगह पे हम सारे लोग मिलने वाले हैं तो ही इस जगह पे सारे लोग आ जाना ओके उलिसेस मतलब क्या है कि द पावर अगर हम नाव हम सही करें अगर सही अभी क्या सपोज मैं अल्कोहलिक में पीता हूँ, सपोज मैं अल्कोहलिक में ड्रिंकिंग करता हूँ। अगर नाउ मैं ड्रिंकिंग करना थोड़ी सी कम कर दूंगा तो फ्यूचर में मेरी सेहत अच्छी होगी। ओके, उसी हिसाब से अगर मैं अभी थोड़ी थोड़ी सी पानी पीऊँगा तो उसका क्वांटिटी में बढ़ते बढ़ाते चलता जाऊँगा तो एक दिन आएगा मेरी बॉडी डिहाइड्रेटेड नहीं रहने वाली है। ओके, एक ऐसी जो वर्तमान को मैं प्लानिंग करके जो वर्तमान को देखते हुए मैं भविष्य को भी प्लानिंग करता हूँ, उसे ही ओवरकमिंग ऑफ यूलिसेस कंट्रैक्ट कहते हैं। ओके, अगर मैं गलत नहीं हूँ तो नेक्स्ट टॉपिक है द इनविजिबल मैकेनिज्म ऑफ द डिसीजन मेकिंग। डिसीजन मेकिंग जो बिहाइंड सीन है उसे हम अभी देखने वाले हैं, अनलॉक करने वाले हैं। क्या है? Knowing yourself is only part of the battle. You also have to know that the outcome of your battles will not be the same every time. Even in the absence of a Ulysses contract, sometimes you will feel more enthusiastic about going to gym, and sometimes less. So sometimes you are more capable of good decision making, and other times your neural parliament will come out with a vote you later regret. Why? It's because the outcome depends on many changing factors about the state of your body, states which can change hour to hour. For example, two men serving a prison sentence are scheduled to appear before a parole board. One prisoner comes before the board at 11:27 a.m. His crime is fraud and he is serving 30 more. Another prisoner appears at 1:15 p.m. He has committed the same crime for which he had been given the same sentence. The first prisoner is denied parole, the second is granted parole. Why? What influenced the decision? Race, looks, age. A study is 2011 analyzed 1,000 rulings from the judges and found it likely was not about any any of those factors. It was mostly about hunger. Just after the parole board had ensured a food break, a prisoner's chance of parole rose to its highest point of 65%, but a prisoner seen towards the end of the session had the lowest chances, just a 20% likelihood of a favorable outcome. In other words, decisions get reprioritized as awareness rise in importance. Valuation change as circumstances change. A prisoner's fate is irrevocably intertwined with the judge's neural networks, which operate according to biological needs. Some psychologists describe this effect as ego deflation, meaning that higher level cognitive areas involved in executive function and planning. For example, the prefrontal cortex get fatigued willpower is a limited resource. We run low on it just like a tank of fuel. In the case of the judges, the more cases they had to make decisions about up to 35 in one sitting, the more energy depleted their brain become. But after eating something like a sandwich and a piece of fruit, their energy stores were refueled and different drives had more power in steering decisions. Traditionally, we assume that humans are rational decision makers. They absorb information, process it, and come up with an optimal answer or solution. But real humans don't operate this way. Even judges striving for freedom from biases are imprisoned in their biology. Our decisions are equally influenced when it comes to how we act with our romantic partners. Consider the choice of monogamy, bonding, and staying with a single partner. This would seem like a decision that involves your culture, your values, and morals. All that is true, but there is a deeper force acting on your decision making as well. Your hormones, one in particular called oxytocin, is a key ingredient in the magic of bonding. In the recent study, men who were in love with their female partners were given a small dose of extra oxytocin. They were then asked to rate the attractiveness of different women with the extra oxytocin. The men found their partners more attractive, but not other women. In fact, the men kept a bit more physical distance from an attractive female research associate in the study. Oxytocin increased the bonding to their partner. Why do we have chemicals like oxytocin steering us toward bonding? After all, from an evolutionary perspective, we might expect that a male should not want monogamy if his biological mandate is to spread his genes as widely as possible. But for the survival of the children, having two parents around is better than one. This simple fact is so important that the brain possesses hidden ways to influence your decision making on this front. Okay, so the invisible mechanism of decision making. ओके हमारे दिमाग हम एक ह्यूमंस एक ऐसे इंसान एक ऐसी स्पेसिस होती है जो कि इनपुट करते हैं एंड उसे प्रोसेस करने के बाद आउटपुट करते हैं एंड उस डिसीजंस लेते हैं ओके एंड ये इसमें ही वही सेम चीज़ ही लिखा है बट अच्छे से मैं समझ नहीं पाया हूँ एंड आपको थोड़ी सी मैं ओके एंड आल्सो इसमें कहा गया है कि जो ऑक्सीटोसिन होती है एक ऑक्सीटोसिन ऑक्सीटोसिन एक एसिड होती है वो रिलीज होती है एंड वो हमारी एंड हमारे पार्टनर के अंदर जो बॉन्डिंग होती है वो बहुत ही स्ट्रॉन्ग कर देती है ओके एंड इसके अंदर एक बॉक्स के अंदर लिखा है बॉक्स है जिसमें कि उसका विल पावर ए फाइनाइट रिसोर्स okay, we spend plenty of energy cajoling ourselves into making decisions. We feel we are out to stay on the straight and narrow. We often fall back on willpower, that inner strength which allows you to pass on the cookie, or at least the second cookie, or which allows you to hit a deadline when you really want to be out in the sunshine. We all know what it feels like when our willpower feels run down after a long, hard day at work. People often find themselves making career choices. For example, eating a larger meal than any they intended to, or watching television instead of hitting their next deadline. So psychologist Roy Baumeister and the colleagues put it to a closer test. People were invited to watch the sad movie. Half were told to react as they normally would, while the other half were instructed to suppress their emotions. After the movie, were all given hard exercises and asked to squeeze it for as long as they could. Those who had suppressed their emotions gave up sooner. Why? Because self-control requires energy, which means we have less energy available for the next thing we need to do. And that's why resisting temptation, making hard decisions, or taking initiative all seem to draw from the same well of energy. So willpower is not something that we just exercise. It's something we deflect. ओके विल पावर के बारे में लिखा गया है विल पावर एक ऐसी चीज़ है कि वो इज नॉट समथिंग दैट वी जस्ट एक्सरसाइज ये एक डिफ्लेक्ट करता है एंड द dorsolateral prefrontal cortex becomes active when uh, dieters choose the healthier food options in front of them, and when people choose to forego a small reward now for a better outcome later. ओके वर्तमान की जो छोटी सी अच्छी रिजल्ट वो बाद में अच्छा आउटकम बन के आता है. ओके. Okay, next topic, that is the decisions and society. This is the last topic of the chapter number 4. Okay, तो let's start करते हैं. A better understanding of decision making opens the door to better social policy. For example, each of us in our own way struggles with impulse control. At the extreme, we can end of a as last to immediate grabbing to our impulses. From this perspective, we can gain a more nuanced understanding of social endeavors such as the war on drugs. Drug addiction is an old problem for society, leading to crime, damaged productivity, mental illness, transmission, and more recently to a burgeoning prison population. Nearly 7 out of 10 prisoners meet the criteria for substance abuse or dependence. In one study, 35.6% of convicted inmates were under the influence of drugs at the time of their criminal offense. Drug abuse translates into many tens of billions of dollars, mostly in terms of drug-related crime. Most countries deal with the problem of drug addiction by criminalizing it. A few decades ago, 38,000 Americans were in prison for drug-related offenses. Today, it's half a million on the face of it. That might sound like success in the war on drugs, but this mass incarceration has not slowed the drug trade. This is because, for the most part, the people behind bars are not the cartel bosses or the mafia dons or the big time dealers. Instead, the prisoners have been locked up for possession of a small amount of drugs, usually less than 2 grams. They are the users, the addicts. Going to prison does not solve their problem. It generally worsens it. The US has more people in prison for drug-related crimes than the European Union has prisoners. The problem is that incarceration triggers an expensive and vicious cycle of relapse and re-imprisonment. It breaks people's existence and social circles and employment of opportunities and gives them new social circle and new employment opportunity. Ones that typically fuel their addiction. Their investment has worked. Since the war began, drug use has expanded. Why has not the expenditure succeeded? The difficulty with drug supply is that it's like a water balloon. If you force it down in one place, it comes off somewhere else. Instead of attacking supply, the better strategy is to address demand. And drug demand is in the brain of addict. Some people argue that drug addiction is about poverty and peer pressure. Those do play a role, but at the core of the issue, this issue is the biology of the brain. In laboratory experiments, rats will be self-administered drugs, continually hitting the delivery lever at the expense of food and drink. The rats are not doing that because of finances or social coercion. They are doing it because the drugs tap into fundamental reward circuitry in their brains. The drugs effectively tell the brain that this decision is better than the other things it could be doing. Other brain networks may join the battle, representing all the reasons to resist the drug. But in an addict, the craving network wins. The majority of drug addicts want to quit but find themselves unable. They end up becoming slaves to their impulses. Because the problem with drug addiction lies in the brain, it's plausible that the solutions lie there too. One can approach is to tip the balance of impulse control. This can be achieved by ramping up the certainty and swiftness of punishment. For instance, by requiring drug offenders to undergo twice weekly drug testing with automatic immediate jail time for failure, thereby not relying on distant obstruction alone. Similarly, economists propose that the drop of American crime since the early 1990s has been due, in fact, to increase the presence of police on the streets. In the language of the brain, the police visibility stimulates the networks that weight long-term consequences. In my laboratory, we are working on another potentially effective approach. We are giving real-time feedback during brain imaging, allowing cocaine addicts to view their own brain activity to learn how to regulate it. Meet one of our participants, Karin. She is bubbly and intelligent, and at 50 years old, she retains a youthful energy. She has been addicted to crack cocaine uh, for over 2 decades, and she describes the drug as having ruined her life. If she sees the drug right is front of her, she feels no choice but to take it. In ongoing experiments in lab, we put current into the brain scanner, functional magnetic resonance imaging, or fMRI. We show her pictures to crack cocaine and ask her crack. That's easy for her to do, and it activates particularly regions of her brain that we summarize as the craving network. Then we ask her to suppress her craving. We ask her to think about the cost crack cocaine has had to her in terms of finances, in terms of relationships, in terms of employment. That activates a different set of brain areas, which we summarize as a suppression network. The craving and suppression network are always battling it out for supremacy, and whichever wins at any moment determines what currents does when offered crack. Using fast computational techniques, the scanner we measure which network is winning, the short-term thinking of the craving network or a long-term thinking of impulse control or suppression network. We give Gary real-time visual feedback in the form of speedometer so he can see how the battle is going. When her craving is winning, the needle is the red zone. So as she successfully surfaces, the needle moves to the blue zones. As she can then use different approaches to discover what works to keep the balance of these networks. By practicing over and over, Corinne gets better at understanding what she needs to do to move the needle. She may or may not be consciously aware of how she is doing it, but by repeated practice, she can strengthen the neural circuitry that allows her to surface. This technique is still in its infancy, but the hope is that when she is next offered cracks, she will have the cognitive tools to overcome her immediate craving if she wants to. This training does not force Karen to behave in any particular way. It is simply gives her and cognitive skills to have more control over her choices rather than being a slave to her impulses. Drug addiction is a problem for millions of people, but prisons are not the place to solve the problem. Equipped with an understanding of how human brains actually make decisions, we can develop new approaches beyond punishment. As we come to better appreciate the operations inside our brain, we can better align our behavior with our best intentions. More generally, a familiarity with decision making can improve the aspects of our criminal justice system. Well, beyond addiction, ushering in policies which are more human and cost effective. What might that look like? It would begin with an emphasis on rehabilitation, rehabilitation over mass incarceration. This may sound illusory, but in fact there are places already pioneering such an approach with great success. One such place is Mendota, Juvenile Treatment Center in Madison, Wisconsin. Wisconsin. Many of the 12 or to 17 years old at Mendota have committed crimes that might otherwise qualify them for life in prison. Here, it qualifies them for admission. For many of the children, this is their last chance. The program started in early 1990s to provide a new approach to working with youths the system had given up on. The program pays particular attention to their young, developing brains, as we saw in the chapter 1. Without a fully developed prefrontal cortex, decisions are often made impulsively without meaningful consideration of future consequences. At Mendota, this viewpoint illuminates an approach to rehabilitation to help the children improve their self-control. The program provides a system of mentoring, counseling, and rewards. An important technique is to train them to pause and consider the future outcome of any choice they might make, encouraging them to run simulations of what might happen, thereby strengthening neural connections that can override the immediate gratification of impulses. The poor impulse control is a hallmark characteristic of the majority of criminals in the prison system. Many people on the wrong side of the law generally know the difference between right and wrong action, and they understand the threat of the punishment, but they are hamstrung by poor impulse control. They see an older woman with an expensive purse and they don't pause to consider other options besides taking advantage of the opportunity. The temptation in the now overrides any consideration of the future, while our current style of punishment rests on the bedrock of personal violation or blame. Mendota is an experiment in alternative, although scientists possess deeply ingrained impulses for punishment, a different kind of criminal justice system, one with a closer relationship to the neuroscience of decisions can be imagined. Such a legal system would not let anyone off the hook, but it would be more concerned with how to deal with lawbreakers with an eye toward their future rather than writing them off because of their past. Those who break the social contracts we need to be off the streets for the safety of society. But what happens in prison does not have to be based only on the blood loss, but also on evidence-based meaningful rehabilitation. Decision making lies at the heart of everything: who we are, what we do, and how we perceive the world around us. Without the ability to weigh alternative we would be hostages to our most basic rights. We could not be able to wisely navigate the now or plan our future lives. Although you have a single identity, you are not of a single mind. Instead, you are a collection of many competing rights. By understanding how choices battle it out in the brain, we can learn to make better decisions for ourselves and for our society. Okay, this is all about chapter number 4, and lastly, I will talk about we talk about the decisions and the society. Okay, प्रिजनर्स, यहाँ पर एक प्रिजनर्स के बारे में बात किया गया है कि प्रिजनर्स जो भी काम करते हैं, जिनका जो प्रिजनर्स चोरी करते हैं, क्यों करते हैं? अगर उनकी जो इम्पल्सेस कंट्रोल, उनकी जो कंट्रोल इम्पल्सेस के ऊपर कम होती है, अब लो कंट्रोल, देन दे हैव अपने आप को वो रोक नहीं पाते कि वो चीज़ करने से। ओके, इसमें कोई उनकी कोई गलती नहीं होती है। तो ओवर द टाइम प्रेजेंट को लेकर उनकी फ्यूचर को हम ऐसे खिलवाड़ नहीं कर सकते। तो अकॉर्डिंग टू द हमें सर्च कर उनके हिसाब से वो फ्यूचर वर्तमान को देखकर फ्यूचर को हम उसे देखकर उसे हम डिसीजंस लेनी चाहिए सोसाइटी के लिए। एंड जो प्रिजनर्स होते हैं उनके लिए जो इम्पल्सिव लॉ होती है उसी हिसाब से डिसीजंस लेते हैं। तो प्रिजन जो जेल होता है वो एक सॉल्यूशन नहीं हो सकता मेरे हिसाब से, इसमें जो लिखा गया है। ओके, दिस इज ऑल अबाउट द चैप्टर नंबर 4 एंड नेक्स्ट वी टॉक अबाउट चैप्टर नंबर 5 इन नेक्स्ट वीडियो। तो इट्स ऑल अबाउट एंड लगभग 1.5 घंटे हो गया एंड मेरा भी गला सूख रहा है। एंड आफ्टर दैट थैंक यू टू एवरीवन एंड स्पेशली मेरे कृष्णा जी, मेरे मम्मी पापा एंड मेरे फ्रेंड्स, मेरे सर्कल में जितने भी लोग हैं सभी को मैं धन्यवाद करना चाहूँगा। एंड कृष्णा जी को जो पिछले दिन दिया था ना बहुत बेहतरीन दिया था, इसके लिए थैंक यू। एंड आज के लिए भी थैंक यू। एंड सूर्यदेव थैंक यू। एंड सूर्यदेव को देखने के लिए फिर से थैंक यू यार, जो भी खाना दिया खाना देने के लिए थैंक यू। एंड अच्छा दिन देने के लिए भी थैंक यू फॉर एवरीथिंग। थैंक यू कृष्णा एंड मिलते हैं तब तक के लिए, बाय एंड कीप स्माइलिंग, नेवर मूव योर अवे। कभी स्माइल को ना तुम्हारे मुंह से कभी हटाना मत, तुम्हारे फेस से। ओके, कीप स्माइलिंग एंड कीप ग्रोइंग। ओके, बाय।